I don't know exactly where to begin because I'm a child of apartheid in America. See, I go back to 1935, and I went to segregated schools in Spotsylvania, Virginia. And at the end of my junior year, I had finished all the courses that the high school offered, and the principal kind of made me his student assistant principal, had me go all over the state to participate in with Negro, or we call it in colored schools, in debates and so forth. And in my senior year, when I talked to them, to Mr. Scott, to Mr. Regler, my vocational instructor, they said, Arthur, you're a great orator, you're a great speaker, thoughtful thinker, but there is no future for Negro lawyers in this country. Why did you go to Tuskegee and become an agricultural expert? Because you were outstanding in New Farmers of America, because we couldn't belong to the Future Farmers of America at that point. And then become a Baptist minister. And indeed, my agricultural instructor came to my home in my senior year, 6 o'clock one evening, and jawboned my father and mother till midnight, trying to persuade them to override my vision, my dream of becoming a lawyer. And they say whatever since he could read and begin to understand the plight of Negroes in America, he's wanted to change America. We're not going to interfere now. And in 1952, I came here to Howard University. And to my shock and dismay, even though I graduated valedictorian in my class, my English essay wasn't up to speed. I had to take a remedial English high school course. And I had not even had geometry in high school. So I took 15 hours, but 6 of it was high school remedial courses. But I know something about overcoming, even before I heard of Martin Luther King. I took those courses, made straight A's, went to the dean of the School of Liberal Arts and said, let me take 6 extra hours so I can finish even with my students, so I could keep up with them. And after the hour and a half of pleading with him, I'm sure with tears in my eyes and my voice cracking, he relented and said, I hope you're with me and with Howard, you're here at the beginning of the next fall. And I said, I'll do it. And I took 23 hours and made straight A's, ended up number 1 in my class. And that started me on my civil rights journey, because as Howard University's number 1 student, I was designated to be Howard's representative on the Adam Clayton Powell radio program every Saturday off Georgia Avenue and V Street, protesting segregation in America. And I coined the phrase, and I'm not sure we were even sex conscious at that point, so I may not have said he and she, I may have said he, that a person should be judged by the quality of his performance, his ability, not by the color of his skin or the accident of his birth. And that was my, you may say, tagline with Adam Clayton Powell. Before Brown versus Board of Education was decided, it was before the Supreme Court. This was the fall of 1953. May 17, 1954, the Supreme Court came down with the Brown decision, and I said, it's about time those learned men agreed with me. But little did I realize that that case would put my life in jeopardy. In 1954, October of 54, beginning my junior year, James Neighborhood, who was chief counsel, and Shafi Bolin called me to his office. I thought at that point, because I was a student leader and head of a number of organizations, almost like the student assistant dean of men, that it was about a school matter. But then he said to me, Arthur, I know you came here to go to Howard and Howard's law school, But you, even though you're a rural boy from Spotsylvania, Virginia, you are the best we have. We want you to become involved in this Brown case. We want you to become the lead plaintiff in the Prince Edward Farmville school cases to apply to law school now. Because I had come here to go to Howard Law School. But at the beginning of my junior year, they said, you have a 3.9 for average. I only had one grade on my transcript report that wasn't an A. And he said, the NAACP and Thurgood Marshall want you to become the lead plaintiff in the Prince Edward Farmville school cases. We want you to apply to law school now in your junior year to those law schools in the top 10 in the nation and to the University of Virginia. The Ku Klux Klan in Virginia is threatening that any nigger kid who would dare try to will be kidnapped and lynched, but we will do all in our power to keep you alive. And so I applied to Columbia, NYU, Syracuse, Boston, and the University of Virginia. The first responses I got from the first four is you are admitted. They didn't even, at that point they didn't require LSAT tests, so I didn't have to take that. And I was admitted to all four of them. I thought it was a letter inviting me to come for an interview. And University of Virginia, then Stonewall. And Thurgood, Neighbor, Spotswood Robinson, Oliver Hill say we got them where we wanted. The 4 top law schools in America that will admit you after your junior year in a 6-year combination program has admitted you without even bothering to go to the trouble of interviewing you. We will now prepare to add you to the Prince Edward Farmville school cases and bring suit against the Commonwealth of Virginia to break the back of massive resistance to desegregation. I kind of grasped my breath and said, before the popular statement, if you talk the talk, you have to do the walk. I say, well, I've coined the phrase, I've been a champion of performance. I can't say no, I was 19 years of age. I didn't even consult with my parents at that point because I guess figured 19, you still say, well, I can make my own decision. So I went home in Thanksgiving of 1954. Told my mother and father that I was not going to Howard Law School, and they thought I'd given my dream. And said, well, after all this time, I said, no, I've been drafted to become the lead plaintiff in this Virginia case. But Dad, it may mean you'll lose your job. It may mean they'll burn down your house. Mom, you could be assaulted or raped or killed. My mother started praying the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is your shepherd, you shall not want. And I kind of faded out. But then she got to those lines that yea, though you walk through the valley of shadow of death, you should fear no evil, for the Lord shall be with you. And my father said, we knew God gave you a talent of being able to read and photograph in your mind like a snapshot of camera what you read. It's just well be you as any other Negro kid in America. Boy, there are no more 2 brilliant lawyers in this country than Thurgood Marshall and James Neighbor. You listen to what they tell you. And I came back here to Howard, prepared, and slept peacefully to meet whatever my destiny would be. At that point, I was meeting with Thurgood and Neighbor every couple of weeks, and long about March, they said we are ready to go into federal court now, and we have talked with Attorney General Burnett that the moment your case goes public, we'll give you 2 marshals to live with you 24 hours a day to keep you alive. You will be in protective custody so that the Klan can't get to you. And just a couple of days before they were prepared to go into federal court in Richmond, Governor Forbes made noises about closing all the colored schools in Arkansas. And I may be alive today because of Governor Forbes. Because then Neighbor called me to his office and said the NAACP and Thurgood has looked at the situation and they don't have enough money to go forward both in your case in Virginia and deal with Forbes, which is a threat to close the kindergarten all the way through high school. to shut down the school system for colored kids in the state of Arkansas. And I lived to see another day. I had desires to go to Columbia was my first choice. Virginia signed an agreement to pay all of my expenses, every penny, rather than have me desegregate the University of Virginia in the fall of '55, like J.S. Burnett did later in Mississippi in '62. But 3 weeks after the settlement, NYU made me an offer that was irresistible. They said, in addition to Virginia paying all it, your record is so outstanding that we will give you a full faculty scholarship and make you a teaching assistant to Emma Zola Berman, who was considered either number 1 or number 2 in the nation in medical malpractice. And I chose NYU. Now I'm going to tell you, I was shocked when I got to NYU because I ended up being the only person of color in my class out of almost 300 students. I thought at least I would have 8 or 10 associates of my complexion. And in my first year, every other time a student was called on, I was that student. Thurgood had said, Arthur, I want you as a little colored boy from rural Spotsylvania, Virginia, to go to New York and prove that you could be as bright, as brilliant as any Jewish kid they could find. And this goes back to the lesson I want you to learn. Prepare, 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 and be prepared every day for the challenges you will face. And indeed, I recall one tit-a-tat with one of my professors when he called on me and I was discussing a Supreme Court case, U.S. Supreme Court. He said to me, Mr. Burnett, that's a stupid idea, and so forth. Where do you get that argument from? I said, I got it from 5 justices of the U.S. Supreme Court. And the class broke out in a thunderous applause. They treated me like I was from Mars or from a foreign country or outer space. And indeed, when I started law school, I had an idea of becoming a career Air Force officer in JAG. But by the end of my second year, I was number 11 in my class. I had almost 300 students. And all of my colleagues said, there's this program at the Department of Justice called the Honors Program. And with your brilliant record here and in college, you should apply for it. I think I delayed to the last day to even apply because I still thought in 1957 there were barriers. And I had planned a military career. And so I applied to the Justice Department and to the Atomic Energy Commission, which is now the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And again, like my law school experience, the first 2 letters I get from them, you are admitted, accepted. And that changed my career from being a military officer, aspired to be a colonel after 25 years as an Air Force JAG officer, to applying to go to the Department of Justice. And I thought my civil rights days were over. But I was still subject to the draft, so I applied for a JAG commission in the Air Force anyway, but I got drafted in the Army, then eventually was commissioned in the Army. But after 2 years in the Army as an Army personnel officer, first as a enlisted man, and then I came back to the Justice Department and I ended up with the hottest job in government. I came back in December of '60. January 20, JFK was sworn in as president. Robert Kennedy, next day as Attorney General. And I get a call from Robert Kennedy. And he said, Arthur, I've checked on the colored lawyers. There were 3 who had been administrative employees until '56. They weren't even classified as lawyers. And say, you've had the most courage, the most brilliant record of any. I want you to be my personal assistant. I want you to be my liaison and keep me advised of all the major criminal cases in the country. But then he dropped a bombshell. He said, that's your cover. I said, what do you mean? He said, no, I want you to be my go-between, me and J. Edgar Hoover, in monitoring the Martin Luther King movement to make sure the Communist Party would not infiltrate it and cause a second civil war in this country. To make sure the FBI do not engage in any racist, unlawful employment practices. sting operations, and so forth. And to make sure the black leaders did not commit any crimes. January 21, I was sworn in where I could only talk to JFK, to Robert Kennedy, and to Wizard White before he was appointed to the Supreme Court. And when Wizard left, Nick Katzenbach. It's only been in the last 3 years that I've been permitted to even share this with you. Eric Holder and Barack Obama indicated I could disclose my role, but I cannot reveal even today the classified information. But I was the reader of all the FBI reports, spending 4 hours a day with Robert Kennedy, keeping him advised of what was going on with the Martin Luther King movement. My wife didn't even know until about 3 years ago that I had performed this confidential role. And indeed, when Jack Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, Robert Kennedy appointed me over the Justice Department supervisory team to direct the FBI investigation into Oswald and Jack Ruby. And again, I'm barred from talking about any classified information. And Bobby Kennedy, to make sure that the senior white lawyers did not pump me for information, put out the word that I was his butler or his valet. So if you've seen the movie called The Butler, there are many chilling episodes. Indeed, when the Selma March occurred, I would stand in his office as close to him where I could put my hand on his shoulders, telling him and the president what I thought they should do. My life has been rich. It's been challenging. But there was still a bigger challenge. In August of '63, Martin came to Washington, and you all know about I Have a Dream speech. I was the undercover agent with the Martin Luther King movement and lived on the mall. Everybody thought I was Martin Luther King tag on it. I was the president's representative to make sure we would not have race riots and disorder. My wife, who was seated in the back, was in the hospital having our second son. And other than sleeping at home 6 hours a night, I was on the mall the remaining day of that whole week as the undercover agent to make sure we would not have race riots in the District of Columbia going out of that camp out on the mall. Bobby left to run for the Senate. I went to the U.S. Attorney's office. I thought my civil rights days were over. But, as the fickle finger of fate would have it, Martin gets assassinated April 4, 1968. I'm the senior prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's office. Gentlemen, you've already heard Mr. Crump talked about. Decided that the police department in the D.C. needed a lawyer inside as a general counsel, we would call legal advisor, to make sure our police did not engage in retaliation and police brutality as a result of the riots that destroyed 14th Street and 8th Street Northeast. And along with a gentleman named Julian Dugas, who was his city administrator, the two of them decided that they wanted me to oversee the operation of police operations in D.C. in 1968 and 1969. I had planned to be there 5 years, but lo and behold, Congress passed the U.S. Magistrates Act, now referred to as U.S. Magistrate Judges, and in '69 I get a call from the Federal District Court. They wanted me to apply to become one of their two magistrates, now called magistrate judges, and I became the first African-American magistrate judge in the history of the nation at age 34. This little country boy whose mother only had an 8th grade education, a father who only had a 6th grade education and worked like a janitor and a gopher for a Sylvania manufacturing paper company. Because of preparation, and commitment, and a passion, ended up being the first general counsel over the police operations in your nation's capital, and then ended up being the assistant judge to John Sirica in handling Watergate cases that led to the resignation of Richard Nixon. I know we've all talked longer than our relevant 15 minutes. So I'm going to fast forward. 6 years into my term as a magistrate, I had another movie experience. In 1975, I was recommended, at 40 years of age, to be appointed to our D.C. Court of Appeals. In competition with Wally Brandt, the dean of this law school, and Julia Cooper Mack. The night before Ford was to make his nomination announcement, I get a call from the White House that the president had selected me for the D.C. Court of Appeals, which is our Supreme Court. But the next morning, Julia Cooper Mack got the appointment because of a deal dealing with legislation the president wanted to get, and I was young enough to get an appointment later. But actually, I had been notified by the White House counsel's office that I was going to be appointed, but I had only told my wife about it and say, well, I'm going to wait till it happens because I knew the processes with politics. And so that one passed me up. But as a result of the disappointment and the fact that my wife was saying to me, we got 4 children, well, I guess by that time 5 children, and court was working me so hard that I would know them like I knew photographs. I got a job offer that you won't believe. I was asked to become the first black lawyer to oversee the entire operation of the federal executive branch of government, the legal advisor for the U.S. civil service system. And I said I would take the job only under one condition, and that is I will act like a federal district court judge. I will not play politics, and any decision that I recommend that you make, if it got to the U.S. Supreme Court, I would have 5 justices agree with me. They said, yes, we will agree to that. So I resigned after 6 years into an 8-year term to become the legal advisor for the entire executive branch of government. Then Jimmy Carter gets elected. And lo and behold, he makes a signature part of his administration and reorganization of the federal government and the civil service system. And he asked who was the expert, and I got designated in detail to the White House to be legislative counsel to President Jimmy Carter in 1977. I worked with Stu Eisenstadt and Steve Davis, and I'm the author of the Civil Service Reform Act of 1978 that carved up the old U.S. Civil Service Commission and created the Office of Personnel Management, the Merit System Protection Board, the Federal Labor Relations Authority, the Office of Special Counsel. And then I'm also the lawyer that worked with the president to create the U.S. Department of Education. And then in 1980, when it appeared that Carter was in trouble, that Reagan would, the guy who had succeeded me as magistrate, got appointed to the city court, and the judges called me and say, are you willing to come back? And with 4 kids in their teens, headed off to college, and not playing politics, I resigned that job and went back as a U.S. magistrate, U.S. magistrate judge now they call it, and served from 80 to 87. And lo and behold, a guy named Hinckley shot Reagan. And who is the judge that gets the case? You're looking at him. And I ended up becoming known to President Reagan. And in 1987, I was appointed to the Superior Court of the District of Columbia by President Reagan. And to bring this to a close, along the way, my wife and I had 5 children. One of them is very precocious. And in 1995, he became the principal inventor of Viagra. And a woman named Marion Wright Edelman and another woman named Hillary Clinton said to me, Judge Burnett, you are such an eloquent spokesperson. After you get 10 years on the bench, why don't you retire and become our national spokesperson? Lectured all over the country as a motivational speaker to inspire African Americans and others not to fill up our prisons and jails and to deal with children issues and elected abuse. So in 1998, 4 years before my 50-year term was up, I took senior judge status. And I worked as Mary Wright Edelman's backup speaker all over the country, speaking on the subjects of social justice, equal rights, finished and unfinished business of Thurgood Marshall and Martin Luther King combined. And then a gentleman named Clyde Bailey, who was a patent lawyer, becoming president of the National Bar, so say, I want you to be my judicial chief of staff, and my oldest son had been his prostate cancer surgeon. And say, one of the problems with Negroes in the country, or our colored people, or African Americans, is that desegregation has led to too much fragmentation. That what we need to do is to create a umbrella organization to bring together so we can act in unity to achieve the unfinished work that Thurgood and Martin set out to do. And with your background, you are our fullback. We want you to design the program. So in 2004, I left Children's Defense Fund and became one of the founders of the National African American Drug Policy Coalition, Incorporated. That coalition included the Congressional Black Caucus, so I serve as the judicial advisor to all the black legislators in Congress. The National Caucus of Black State Legislators, almost 800 of them. They could call on me and call on Howard University, and I'm here at Howard as kind of Thurgood Marshall's successor, to make sure that our black state legislators throughout this country are vigilant with reference to legislation that will raise equal protection and due process issues and constitutional issues. I took a 2-year sabbatical that turned into a 9-year sabbatical, and then I got pulled into an operation that I wish I was 30 years younger. Barack Obama, who had been in the Senate and a member of the Congressional Caucus, asked me to be the judicial advisor to his programs dealing with Fatherhood Initiative, black male achievement, drug policy, even working with Valerie Jarrett to even vet his speeches before he makes them to let him know what questions he might get. And then I'm also in a working group of about 7 cabinet departments, including the Justice Department, Health and Human Services, HUD, Veterans Administration, Labor Department. I'm all over the government. Matter of fact, a lot of people that I remember, a close friend of mine, Eugene Hamilton, the chief judge, told me one day that when I lost an appointment to a U.S. District Court, it was passed over and Emmett Sullivan was appointed, then maybe God has in store for you a bigger challenge. Indeed, Gene was the chief judge of the Superior Court, said, I wish I could go and work with you, but I still have a few days to wrap up here, and he died, unfortunately, before he got that chance. I lay that as a predicate to conclude that today I face the biggest challenge in my life. On March 16, the presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church of the entire United States approved a commission going national that will deal with the remaining civil rights issues of this country, to come up with a Civil Rights Act of 2018, to come up with amendments to the U.S. Constitution that will make it current for the 21st century, to hold hearings across this country, and to come up with a report equivalent to the Kerner Commission. I am the General Chair, and I accept the challenge, and I welcome the assistance of each and every one of you. I'm 81, but I tell my wife I want to die with my boots on, because it's something about being significant, not just living and being in a rocking chair, sitting on a porch. And my wife would tell you, she She pushes me to even get 6 or 7 hours sleep a night. And indeed, the mayor of the city here has appointed me as a commissioner to a commission on fathers, men, and boys to reduce violence in the District of Columbia. And I'm the secretary and spokesperson for that commission. I got enough stuff coming at me that if I were 5 or 10 of me, I could stay busy and keep 5 or 10 people busy. So I welcome your help. Thank you.